Have you ever felt completely safe in your dorm room, your school, your campus library late at night? That's what they all thought too. But safety is an illusion. In the dark corners of those hallways, behind those locked dorm doors, something or someone is always watching. A girl wakes up to the weight of a body pressing down beside her. A student working late hears footsteps above the ceiling tiles, and a shadow grins down from the stairwell. A teenage girl follows what she thinks is a teacher, only to see two men waiting in a car with the door already open. These stories aren't from horror movies. They happened, and they could happen to anyone who dares to believe that daylight means safety. Welcome to the channel where we uncover the real darkness that hides in plain sight. Turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and stay close, because tonight you'll learn just how thin the line between normal and nightmare really is. Subscribe now before the lights go out. I grew up in a quiet town in West Virginia, the kind of place where everyone knows each other and nothing ever really happens. Or at least, that's what I used to believe. When I started college in 2021, the world still felt uncertain, the air heavy with fear and isolation. Most students didn't live on campus anymore, too afraid, too cautious, but I didn't have the luxury of choice. I couldn't afford an apartment, so I stayed in the nearly empty dorms, hoping for the college experience everyone talked about. I never imagined that what I would experience there would haunt me for the rest of my life. My roommate's name isn't important, but I'll never forget her face. We exchanged a few texts before meeting. She seemed polite, reserved, maybe a little cold. When we finally met, she barely smiled. Her words were short, clipped, calculated. She moved with an elegance that felt practiced, but there was a strange emptiness in her eyes. One thing she said during our first conversation still lingers in my mind. Everyone has their own room now, she told me. I did last semester, until you came. There was no smile, no laugh, just that quiet tone, like she was disappointed I existed. That first week went by without much interaction. She spent most nights with her boyfriend, rarely sleeping in our room. I told her I usually went home on weekends and returned Monday mornings around 6. She didn't seem to care. It should have been a relief. Privacy, silence, freedom. But it wasn't. The silence in that dorm was suffocating. Every creak of the old floorboards, every hum of the heater, felt amplified. Sometimes I caught myself glancing at her bed even when she wasn't there, expecting movement. I tried to convince myself it was just nerves, a new place, new people, new fears. The first weekend, I packed my bag and went home. When I came back early Monday morning, the room was pitch black. She was asleep, facing the wall. I climbed onto my bed, exhausted, and let myself sink into the thick memory foam mattress. 10 minutes later, I felt it. A pressure. A faint dip at the edge of my bed, like someone had placed their hand or knee there. My body froze. I didn't breathe. I waited, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The mattress rose back to normal, as if whoever or whatever had been there pulled away. I told myself I was half dreaming, too tired to think straight. When I looked over, she hadn't moved. Still facing the wall, still sleeping. I forced myself back to sleep, though my body trembled for hours. The next Monday, it happened again, only this time, it was worse. I lay down after getting back from home, still half asleep, when the mattress sagged again. But not just at the corner. The entire side sank under a weight heavier than before. Someone was sitting right next to me. I didn't dare move. I waited, paralyzed, listening. Then I heard a thud, the sound of someone jumping off the side of my bed. My bed was high. You couldn't just step down. The sound was unmistakable. I turned slowly, scanning the room. She was there, just like before, turned toward the wall. Breathing softly. Sleeping. By now, I was questioning my sanity.
All right, honey?
Was it sleep paralysis? Hallucination? No. I could move. I could think. I could feel.
Scared.
My brain screamed to run, but my body refused to move.
It all happened
I stayed
so
frozen
fast.
until sunlight crept through the blinds, then finally forced myself to get up. The air in the room smelled faintly of something chemical, medicine maybe. I didn't remember that smell before. That night, I couldn't close my eyes without feeling phantom pressure against my back. The third time was the breaking point. I returned from the weekend, my hands shaking as I unlocked the door. She was already there, lying on her side, facing my bed this time. That was new. I told myself not to overthink it. I climbed into bed, turned away, and pretended to sleep. 5 minutes later, the mattress sank again. I could feel the shift of weight beside me. My heart thundered. Then slowly, something cold touched the back of my neck. A hand. Not pushing, not squeezing, just resting there. Still, the air grew heavy thick. My throat closed up. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. I counted the seconds in my head, each one feeling longer than a minute. Eventually, the weight lifted. Whoever it was got off the bed. I stayed motionless, waiting, praying. When I finally turned around, she was still there, eyes closed, facing the wall. That was enough. I grabbed my phone, ran out of the room, and called my mom from the hallway. I don't remember what I said, only the trembling in my voice and the way she told me to leave, to go straight to the office. The school let me switch dorms immediately. They asked if I wanted to involve the police, but what could I say? That my roommate touched me in my sleep, but I had no proof? I said no. I just wanted to be as far away from her as possible. Later, when I unpacked in my new room, I remembered little details that sent shivers down my spine. She once mentioned a previous roommate who didn't stay long. She never said why. Another time, I saw her open a drawer filled with prescription bottles, at least 10 of them. She claimed they were for a skin condition, but something about the way she said it didn't feel right. Her hands shook slightly when she touched them. The labels had her name, but the dosages varied wildly. A few days later, she texted me, said I'd left a book and a binder in the room and should come get them. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem suspicious. My key still worked, so I went back during the day. She wasn't there. I grabbed my things quickly, turned around, and froze. She was standing in the doorway, silent, staring. I hadn't heard her unlock the door. My heart nearly stopped. I forced a smile and said I was just leaving. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes unblinking. Then she asked, "Where's your new room?" I lied. She pressed for details, which hall, which side, near the stairs. I lied again. She just stared for a moment longer, then turned away, muttering something I couldn't hear. I left without looking back. I never saw her again. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm half asleep, I still feel it, that slow, sinking weight beside me, that invisible hand resting on my neck. Maybe she was sleepwalking. Maybe it was the medication. Or maybe she was awake the whole time, testing how close she could get before I noticed. My mom believes that if I hadn't moved dorms when I did, one morning I wouldn't have woken up at all. And deep down, I think she's right. The second story takes place far from that small dorm room, but the dread it carries feels just as heavy. It was during my last year at the University of Huddersfield, a place known more for its sterile quiet than for its nightlife. By then, I was buried under the weight of assignments, particularly one monstrous statistics project that had kept me awake for days. My own laptop was failing me, so late one night I headed to the business building to use their computers. The building stood apart from the rest of campus like a forgotten relic, 3 stories high with dim windows and a reputation for being unnervingly silent after dark. I arrived around 10 at night. The campus was dead, the air colder than it should have been. As soon as I swiped my ID card and heard the beep of the door unlocking, an unnatural chill ran through me. The smell of cleaning chemicals filled the hall, telling me the janitors had already done their rounds. I thought that was a good thing at the time. No one to disturb me, no one to watch me work. I couldn't have been more wrong. The second floor computer lab was empty. Rows of monitors glowed faintly in the dark, humming like insects. For the first hour, I managed to work, losing myself in data and formulas. Every so often I'd glance at the clock on the screen, promising myself I'd leave before 1 in the morning. But at exactly 11:30, something broke the stillness. A door slammed shut somewhere deeper in the building. Not the front entrance. Something inside. I froze. My fingers hovered above the keyboard as I strained to listen. Maybe the ventilation system had knocked it closed. Maybe a janitor had come back. That's what I told myself. I tried to focus on the numbers, but then I heard them footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoing down the hallway outside the lab. Not rushed, not tentative, but heavy, steady, like whoever it was wanted me to know they were there. My skin prickled. I stared at the screen, hoping whoever it was would just walk by. Instead, the steps stopped right outside the lab door. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it shook the chair. I could see a sliver of the hallway through the narrow window in the door if I leaned back, but my body wouldn't move. I just sat there, holding my breath. Then the handle rattled. Not a gentle test, but a violent shake, like someone was trying to force their way in. I knew the doors locked automatically after a certain hour. They shouldn't have been able to open it. Still, the sound of that handle jerking back and forth felt like knives scraping inside my skull. After maybe 30 seconds, though it felt like minutes, the rattling stopped. The footsteps started again, moving slowly down the hall until they faded into nothing. I sat frozen, my hands trembling above the keyboard. Logic told me to leave, but the project was due at 8 the next morning. Maybe it was just another student messing around. Maybe. I forced myself to keep working, glancing at the door every few seconds. That's when the real nightmare began. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps again. Not in the hallway this time. Above me, on the ceiling. The business building had those thin ceiling panels you can push aside to access pipes or wiring. You can sometimes hear the heating system at night. This wasn't that. This was weight movement, a body crawling over the tiles. I stared upward, every muscle locked, as one of the panels above me shifted slightly, just enough to show something pressing down from above. A long, slow creak followed, the sound of someone lowering themselves carefully, trying not to be heard. My stomach dropped. There was no more pretending. Someone was up there. I yanked out my flash drive, shoved my notebook into my backpack, and bolted. The second I stepped into the hallway, it felt like a different world. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting sickly shadows against the walls. The hall stretched out like a tunnel, empty but suffocating. My sneakers squeaked against the tile as I walked fast, too afraid to break into a run. I could feel eyes on me, though I didn't dare turn around. I reached the stairwell door and shoved it open, starting down the stairs. That was when I made the mistake of looking up. On the landing above, one floor up, stood a man. Not a student, not a professor. His clothes hung loose and torn, his face half hidden by shadow. But I could see his mouth. It hung open in a grin too wide to be human, his teeth glinting under the flickering light. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring down at me. My heart slammed against my ribs. I bolted, nearly tripping over my own feet as I raced down the stairs. I shoved through the first floor door and sprinted to the front entrance. My ID card beeped just in time to unlock it, and I flung it open, running across campus without looking back. I didn't stop until I was inside my dorm room, the door locked, my back pressed to it as I tried to catch my breath. Only then did I realize I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The next morning, I had no choice but to go back to the business building to turn in the project. In daylight, it looked harmless again, just another tired old building. But as I walked toward the lab, my stomach twisted. One of the ceiling panels was missing. The one directly above where I had been working, along with a second panel in the corner, the same corner where I had seen movement. It was as if someone had been watching me the whole time, rattled the door when they couldn't get in, and then climbed back up to enter through the ceiling. I dread to think what would have happened if I'd stayed even a few minutes longer. Now, whenever I work late, I don't go back to that building. I don't even stay in the library past dark. I've bought a new laptop, and I finish my assignments in my dorm no matter how bad the Wi-Fi is. Some nights, though, when the hall outside my room is quiet and I hear a soft creak from above, I can't help but look up and wonder if someone's there, waiting. This last story begins far from the silent halls of American universities. It takes place in the United Kingdom, in a newly built high school that looked bigger than it really was. The building was divided into 3 sections, a nursery, a school for children with learning disabilities, and the main high school. Security was supposed to be tight. Students were issued lanyards with ID cards that had to be scanned to move beyond the foyer, and staff repeated the same rule over and over: never let someone you don't recognize into the building. On my second full day at this school, when I was only 16, I learned how fragile those rules really were. It started with something ordinary. After lunch, I had geography class all day. I had downed too much juice in the cafeteria, and 20 minutes later, I was desperate for the bathroom. We weren't usually allowed to leave during class, but my teacher saw the urgency on my face and reluctantly let me go. The hallways were empty. Even teachers rarely wandered during lessons. I let myself through the double doors into the cafeteria, which now stood deserted, its long tables and chairs silent as if abandoned. The emptiness felt strange, like the building was holding its breath. After using the bathroom, I retraced my steps back into the cafeteria. That's when I saw him. A man sat alone at one of the tables. He wasn't a student, too old, and he didn't look like a teacher either, though he wore a lanyard with an ID clipped to it. I assumed he was some staff member or a parent, maybe waiting for someone. I kept walking. Then he said, "Hey." His voice cut through the silence, making me squeal softly, embarrassed. He chuckled and said, "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." The lanyard caught my eye. The ID card was flipped backward, the blank side facing out. It wasn't unusual for kids to do that, but it was strange for an adult. I didn't think about it much in the moment. He asked, "I need some help getting some work things out of my car. Do you mind coming out with me for just a sec?" Without hesitating, I said yes. In my head, he was a teacher asking for a favor. Teachers often made small talk when you walked with them. This man didn't. He kept shifting his hands, first in his pockets, then clasped together like he couldn't decide what to do with them. The silence between us felt wrong, but I was shy and awkward, too timid to question it. We left the building, walking toward the car park. The front of the school had a stretch of about 50 meters of pavement before you reached the lot, which was hidden behind bushes. If you kept going straight instead of turning, you'd leave school property entirely. He led me toward the lot, saying his car was the blue one at the end. He mentioned that his work stuff was in the boot, what people in the UK call the trunk. He said he had a few bags and just needed me to help carry them back inside. I said it was fine. As we approached the car, I saw movement in the back seat. At first, I thought it was shadows. Then I realized there were two men hiding back there. My stomach turned to ice. Instead of running, my body locked up. I must have betrayed my realization because the back door swung open. One of the men inside scrambled to get out. At the same moment, the man beside me grabbed my arm. He was tall and heavy-set, towering over my small frame. Somehow, adrenaline surged through me.
What was
I
that?
yanked my arm free with every ounce of strength I had and bolted toward the school. Behind me, multiple sets of footsteps thundered against the pavement. They were chasing me. I didn't look back. My only thought was to reach the doors. The school had big glass automatic doors at the entrance, and you had to wait a second for them to open. If they had kept running, they would have caught me. But they stopped. Maybe they feared being seen through the glass. Maybe they had another plan. I didn't care. The doors slid open, and I burst through, sprinting into the foyer and straight toward the attached cafe. A woman working there looked up as I gasped out what had happened. She calmed me enough to speak, then took me to a teacher's office. The police were called. My parents were called.
What?
I sat there trembling, clutching my arms, unable to stop
police,
shaking.
I need to report an
Later, I
emergency.
learned how they got inside. Someone had dropped their lanyard outside the building. That was how the man had entered, and why he flipped the ID card backward to hide the picture. The cameras in the car park caught everything. They were arrested and charged with attempted kidnapping. I stayed home for weeks afterward, terrified of walking alone anywhere. Therapy helps, but the memory still claws at me. Sometimes I think back to how easily it could have gone differently. If I hadn't noticed the movement in the back seat. If I hadn't managed to pull free. If the doors had taken one more second to open. People talk about monsters as if they're hiding under the bed. But monsters walk through our schools wearing borrowed badges. They smile. They ask for help. And if you're not paying attention, they take you. The three stories may have happened to different people in different countries, but they share a single, terrifying truth. Evil doesn't live in haunted houses or dark forests. It lives in ordinary places, in dorm rooms, hallways, classrooms, and parking lots. It wears familiar faces and waits for moments when we feel safest. That is what makes it so horrifying. Because by the time we realize something is wrong, it's already too late. After hearing about what happened to those students, it's hard not to imagine what it feels like to be in their place. To wake up in your own room and feel the mattress dip beside you, to lie frozen as cold fingers rest on your neck while your supposed roommate breathes steadily nearby. The mind wants to explain it away: stress, sleep paralysis, exhaustion. But deep down, we know when something touches us, when someone is there. And once you've felt that weight pressing down beside you in the dark, you never really sleep the same again. The idea that someone could do that, quietly, deliberately, pretending to sleep only a few feet away, it doesn't just haunt the victim. It poisons the idea of safety itself.
Always watching.
The second story plays in my mind like a nightmare that refuses to fade. The thought of sitting alone in a dim computer lab, hearing slow footsteps echoing in the hallway, the metallic rattle of a locked door handle, then silence, followed by the scrape of movement above the ceiling tiles. The image of a face peering down through the flickering light. Most people think they'd run immediately, but fear does strange things. It roots you in place. It makes you small. You sit there, every instinct screaming that something terrible is about to happen, but you can't move until it's almost too late. That student escaped because of luck and timing, nothing more. Someone was in that ceiling. Someone who wanted to get inside. And then there's the girl from the UK. 16 years old, polite, eager to please, told her whole life to respect adults. That single habit nearly got her taken. A fake teacher, a real ID, a blue car with men waiting inside. She only survived because she trusted her instincts for one fleeting second. When something didn't feel right, her body moved before her mind could think. It's horrifying how easily it could have ended differently. One extra second, one more step, and she would have been gone. Together, these stories paint a portrait of fear that feels too real because it is real. The monsters in these tales aren't ghosts or demons, they're people. People who smile when they want to hurt you, people who know exactly how to blend in. That's what makes them so dangerous. You can't exorcise them. You can't lock them away in another realm. They walk among us in daylight in the places we think are safe. Each victim was told the same comforting lie: you're safe here, on campus, in your dorm, at your school. But there is no safe place when you stop paying attention. There are only locked doors that don't stay locked, hallways that echo with footsteps long after they should be empty, and faces that look normal until they don't. The girl in the dorm thought she was imagining things. The student in the lab thought he was hearing pipes. The teenager thought she was helping a teacher. They all believed logic over instinct. And instinct, as it turns out, was the only thing that could have saved them sooner. The fear that lingers after these stories isn't just about what happened, it's about what could still happen. How many dorms hold secrets behind their locked doors? How many classrooms echo with the footsteps of someone who isn't supposed to be there? How many people are living with the memory of a cold hand, a missing ceiling tile, or the sound of a car door opening behind them? We tell ourselves it's over, that it won't happen again. But somewhere out there, another door handle is rattling. Another bed is shifting. Another person is watching and waiting. So if you're listening to this, and you ever feel that something's off, even slightly, don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it. Fear exists for a reason. It's the body's last warning before something terrible happens. These stories aren't meant to just scare you. They're meant to remind you that trust is earned, not given. That danger hides best where comfort lives. And that the people who scare us the most are the ones who look exactly like everyone else. When you go to sleep tonight, lock your doors. Check under your bed if you have to. But most importantly, listen to your instincts. Because the real horror isn't what hides in the dark, it's realizing too late that you invited it in. Fear is a strange thing. It warns us, it protects us, but it can also paralyze us. What happened in these stories isn't about ghosts or curses, it's about moments when people ignored that quiet voice inside them that whispered, something isn't right. Each of them believed they were in control, surrounded by safety, a locked dorm room, a secure school, a familiar classroom. But safety is not a place. It's awareness. It's instinct. And sometimes, it's the courage to act before your brain has time to explain the danger away. The girl in the dorm ignored the feeling that her roommate's presence wasn't normal. The student in the computer lab told himself the footsteps and scraping above his head were nothing but old pipes. The teenager trusted an adult because he wore a lanyard. Each of them was given a choice to listen to their fear or to dismiss it. And each learned how thin the line between logic and survival really is. So what can we take from their experiences? First, trust your instincts, even when you can't explain them. If the hair on your neck stands up, if your stomach twists for no reason, pay attention. That feeling has kept humans alive for thousands of years. Don't apologize for it. Don't downplay it. The moment you start explaining away your fear is the moment danger steps closer. Second, never assume safety based on familiarity. Dorms, schools, and workplaces feel secure because they're routine, but predators use that comfort against you. They hide in routines. They watch for patterns. If you work late, vary your schedule. Don't let your guard down just because you're in a place that's supposed to be safe. Evil doesn't care about rules or locks. It looks for the one moment when you stop looking. Third, prepare yourself mentally. Know your exits, your surroundings, and who you can call for help. If you feel unsafe, tell someone even if it feels silly. It's better to sound paranoid than to stay silent and regret it later. Fear thrives in isolation. The moment you share it, it loses some of its power. Lastly, remember that courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means acting despite it. The girl who ran from the car, the student who fled the lab, the freshman who called her mom, they were all terrified. But they moved. And that movement is what saved them. In the end, fear is not the enemy. Complacency is. These stories remind us that horror doesn't need monsters or haunted houses. It only needs people who stop paying attention. So tonight, as you finish this story, lock your door. Look around your room. Listen to the sounds you normally ignore. The creak of the floor, the hum of the vent, the whisper of wind against the window. They're probably nothing. But if one night they aren't, you'll be glad you listened. If you enjoy hearing the true stories that reveal the real darkness in our world, subscribe now. Turn on your notifications, stay alert, and remember, the scariest stories aren't the ones we make up. They're the ones still happening somewhere right now while you're listening in the dark.